Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, September 22nd, and this week, traffic gets worse, StopClub helps drivers, and Uber fights the EU. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by co-founder and lead attorney Bryant Greening. Bryant, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. Great to be back.
Yeah, as always, some interesting news this week. And we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start off with Monday here. Uber made traffic bad. Robo-taxis will apparently make it worse. This is from San Francisco Chronicle. The ads, quote, "The real threat from robo-taxis is the underlying technology. Once these cars inevitably learn to get around the traffic cones and gain the public's trust, their convenience could seduce us into vastly overusing our cars. The result, an artificial intelligent powered nightmare of traffic, technically perfect but awful for our cities." Now, a lot of this was based on research from the 2010s. The people writing this article were actually the same people at a research at MIT who said that rideshare would be good for cities and the country. But as they said here, quote, "Our research was technically right, but we had not taken into account changes in human behavior." And they found years later that what they once thought would help the cities, it increased traffic and 69% more carbon dioxide than the trips they displaced. Really interesting. There's a lot more. You guys should really check it out. Really interesting article, Brian, and they go into a lot of detail. It's also really fascinating to see this article where they said, yeah, we had research before. We thought rideshare was good, and now we're sorry and we're wrong. So,
yeah, it's one of those things where the data is really interesting, and we can all make predictions as to where new technology is going to take us, but we really don't know until we get there.
yeah.
So, what I take away from this article is just, we're seeing so much change so quickly, and a lot of it's really exciting. I mean, we're on the record here saying that we believe autonomous vehicles are eventually going to be, the wave of the future, and that I don't think that's a stretch at all with how fast things are moving. But we also are saying we don't have any clue what that really means. Are they going to be safe enough? Are they actually going to make cities run smoother than they currently do? We can all guess. The researchers can come up with their hypotheses. The scientists can crunch the data. But until there's all these cars on the road, we're really just guessing at what the results are going to be.
I found it very interesting that they had brought up something that I overlooked as well. I thought kind of the same, robo-taxis will kind of have this. I feel like traffic eventually could look really kind of wild. Every car is just kind of flowing almost organically. But yeah, I didn't think about what they had said, that, changes in human behavior, because once that happens, there's going to be more people on the roads, because they'll say, well, I don't have to even think. I can just get in a vehicle and it'll do everything for me. So yeah, I guess, we'll see what happens, but definitely it's interesting to see they changed the tune this time around and just saying, just get ready, guys. It's basically what they're saying.
Yeah, just one more point on that. I like that these researchers are learning from mistakes in the past. That we all thought rideshare was going to change the world in one way, and it ended up changing the world in hundreds of ways. So there's a lot of unintended consequences. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are great, some of them are catastrophic, and
Right.
it's yet to be seen in terms of the robo taxis what the good things are, what the bad things are, and everything in between.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to hit up into Tuesday. Tulsa rideshare drivers go on strike. And this is from ABC 8. They reported, quote, "They're striking because they say they've been treated unfairly by the companies they're working for," which is, of course, Uber and Lyft. Some drivers have said they noticed discrepancies between what customers pay and the share paid to drivers. According to one driver, it's a trend that's getting worse. I will say this, Brian, it's nothing new here, but there's something really interesting about this discrepancies. We're seeing it more and more that drivers are becoming really aware of what the passenger is paying versus what they're getting.
Yeah, and a lot of times passengers and drivers are now sharing that information. information. It's becoming more common for drivers to say to the passenger, "Hey, what did you pay for this ride?" And then take a guess at what I'm actually walking away with. And once that conversation is had, everybody is shocked, and there's a lot of angry drivers out there because they rightfully feel like they're getting screwed. So I like to see drivers, acting together and taking a stand to at least make their voices heard. Unless drivers work together, like we're seeing them doing in Tulsa right now, the companies win. There's no reason for the companies to make changes if the drivers, don't use the power and voice that they have, and it takes that collective bargaining and that collective behavior to be heard and to be strong. So, bravo to the drivers in Tulsa for using their fist, their strong hands and their loud voices.
Yeah, I think exactly good for them. And I think what we've seen in the past, typically it starts with a strike, gets some attention, and then they start moving it into really the political side, talking to the local, this local government and saying, "Hey, let's change this." So this seems to be the first step in these cities, and it's a good first step.
Agreed.
Let's head into Wednesday, which is very exciting. This is called the Stop Club app, and it's a dream for drivers, and it's an absolute nightmare for Uber. So Rest of World adds, quote, Stop Club reads the fare directly from the ride-sharing app and displays the calculation. It can even automatically reject fares below a certain price set by the driver. Since it added the fare calculator, Stop Club has gone from around 87,000 active users in February to 250,000 across Brazil. As an example, one driver said before he downloaded Stop Club, he would spend about $25 on gas per day. Now he spends only $17 and maybe up to 21 max. And he basically said with Stop Club, it's as if a blindfold has been removed from our eyes. And of course, and no shock, Uber of Brazil took Stop Club to court in July, claiming the app was illegally obtaining and storing confidential data related to passengers, drivers, and ride prices. What's interesting, however, is Stop Club responded and said, we're not extracting any data. In fact, it's the data that you see on the screen. And it turns out Uber lost the injunction to block the app. This is really fascinating. I think this app is really, we just talked about the last story where there's pay discrepancies. They're not quite sure where the pay's going. And now here's an app saying we are lifting the blindfold off. Awesome.
It really is. We love to see what they're doing because they're providing transparency. And in every other job in the world, you know what you're getting paid for your work. People don't show up for work unless they're confident that they're going to be paid fairly and pursuant to an agreement that they had before they showed up. That's how work works. So what this app is really doing is giving drivers the knowledge that they need to understand whether certain fares make sense for them, whether the work itself makes sense for them, how to maximize their profits and minimize their costs. And it's just giving drivers power. So we love to see when drivers have the ability to make smart decisions for themselves, increase the money that stays in their pockets, and make good decisions for their business that they're running. Because at the end of the day, that's what drivers are. They're running their own businesses and they need to make smart economic decisions. So this app is just empowering them to do so.
I'm just so pumped about this app, even from a technical side. It's brilliant because you never know with the courts, of course, and Brazil is different. And to be honest, I also don't know if Stop Club is in the U.S. yet, but the way that Stop Club is operating is so different than a lot of other apps that have to get access from Uber to gain that information. Stop Club is literally reading what's on the screen, so Uber's going to have a really hard time saying they're stealing any data. They're not stealing anything. They're using what apparently everyone is allowed to see. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this grows. And it's the thing that drivers want, which is just the transparency and letting them know if this ride's even worth it. And it's almost like it's a hack, basically, and it's working, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think that the technology, I'd be interested to see what kind of copycats come out, because once everybody realizes that the techno or that the information is right there, I think the community is just going to keep growing and growing to try to make the available information even more accessible and more usable.
Right. This could be like a Napster moment for the industry, for you guys out there and gals that remember Napster. It just sort of took over and changed the music industry. So we'll see. Let's head off into Thursday. Uber threatens to leave Brussels. And this is from FT. And they reported, quote, a top Uber executive has warned that Brussels' proposals to designate gig workers as de facto employees will force its ride-hailing service to shut down in hundreds of cities across the bloc and raise prices by as much as 40% if enacted. They went on to say that Uber is sincerely committed to the European social model, but warned that similar rulings classifying drivers as employees in Spain and Geneva have led to devastating job losses, is what they say. I don't know how much you know about the Spain market, Bryant, but I don't know. I'm kind of. It sounds like a lot of BS to me.
Yeah, I don't know much about the Spain market. I will start there, but I can tell you we've seen Uber make these similar proclamations before, and it doesn't seem to pan out. I hope that workers um, continue to advocate for their own benefit. I hope that the governments stand behind the workers and demand fairness and basic human rights and employment rights. And I hope that nobody takes or gives too much credit to what Uber's saying, because they say that stuff all the time and then they never follow through. So there's really no reason in my mind why we shouldn't be fighting for more, demanding more, and calling Uber's bluff.
Yeah, and I will say Europe seems to be doing a better job of calling the bluff. They did it in London. They've tried in other places, and Europe seems to understand that this is just a game, and the game that Uber's going to lose if they keep playing it. So,
Right.
yeah,
I don't see a situation in which Uber is pulling out of huge markets. Uh, there's too much money to be made. That's the bottom line, and there's too much money to be lost. So
right.
maybe they um, don't make as much money as they were before because they have to pay the drivers a little bit more. But I just can't imagine them leaving that whole market on the table.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure this will progress, and there'll be a back and forth. But yeah, I'm curious to see where that goes. We're going to head off into Friday, end of the week here. Robo trucks hit the Uber network, and this is from Forbes, and they reported big rigs outfitted with, I believe it's called Wabies, AI-enabled software and sensors began hauling loads between Dallas and Houston, booked through Uber Freight this month. The founder and CEO told Forbes, the trucks do have human backup drivers for now, but it will eventually operate in full autonomous mode, she said. The Toronto-based company spent 2 years perfecting its system, using virtual trucks driving in advanced simulation before testing them on public roads. Now, she did decline to say exactly how many trucks are part of the Uber Freight program or how much money, how much revenue the company will generate from it. So it's something that, Bryant, you and I had talked about a couple months ago, that people are starting to turn back into the AV freight side and saying, hey, let's focus on this and throw money into it.
Yeah, as we were talking about earlier in the episode, AV it's coming, but it scares me. It's scary with passenger vehicles, and I think it's even scarier with these massive trucks. When people get injured by semi trucks, the damages are catastrophic. So I really hope that the technology is, as they said, perfected. But I highly doubt that to be the case. So I'm glad that there's humans still there as fail safes. But at the end of the day, when those human drivers are no longer in the vehicle, God help us, because if the AV messes up with a big rig, it's going to be real bad.
Yeah, I mean, that is what's scary. There's obviously, I know the plus of why they're doing this, because there's not all these stoplights, stop signs, turns. It's these are straight ahead. But like you said, if there's a moment where it just doesn't stop, I mean, it's one thing when a car doesn't stop at 60 miles an hour. It's another when a freight doesn't stop at 60 miles an hour. And like you said, it could be devastating. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to. I guess this is going to be the growing pains, and it's horrible to say, but I don't know how they get around it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like as a as a human and somebody who wants to see progress in mankind, like it's cool that we're going down this path. But as a personal injury attorney, um, I've seen too many things go wrong. Even when they've been tested and tried for hundreds of years. It's like this new technology we have zero history with. We have zero real information on how it's going to react in each particular situation that it faces. So it scares me. And I know based on what we've seen with Uber vehicles and Google vehicles and Teslas that like the AV, it's just not there. It's just not ready. Maybe it will be in a few years, but I just don't think the technology is ready to put it in these big rigs.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, but they're not stopping. And I think they figure they'll take their losses, and it's horrible, but that's what they think they're going to do. All right, before we head on from the weekend, though, I will give you the floor to give a little shout out to LR, and then we'll head off the weekend.
We always like to remind people before we head into the weekend that Legal Rideshare is available for free consultations for any accident or injury claim. So if you find yourself injured in a rideshare vehicle, please reach out to us so that we can help point you in the right direction, figure out exactly how to talk to the insurance companies to give yourself the best possible chance at recovery. Our lawyers help recover costs of medical treatment, pain and suffering, loss of normal life, lost wages, you name it, any damage that you sustain. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bryant. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.